Emma Carter never imagined that a quiet Sunday evening in her Seattle apartment would become the beginning of something that would shake her simple routine. But everything changed the moment her old television froze in the middle of a movie she had put on to distract herself from her recent heartbreak, a breakup she was still learning to accept. The room was dim, the soft rain outside tapping against the glass like a reminder of how still her life had felt these past few weeks, and the sudden glitch on the screen felt like another small problem she didn't have the energy to fix. She tried pressing buttons, unplugging wires, even tapping the side of the TV in frustration, but nothing worked, and for a moment she simply stood there feeling a strange mix of irritation and loneliness. Then she remembered her neighbor across the hall, Daniel Brooks, a man she had seen many times in the elevator, always offering a friendly smile or a polite nod, someone who seemed warm and grounded without ever being too forward. Emma hesitated, unsure if she should bother him, but the silence in her home made her feel heavier than the broken TV, so she finally took a deep breath, slipped on her slippers and opened her apartment door. As she walked the few steps across the hallway, her heart thumped with the awkwardness of asking a neighbor for help, but Daniel opened the door almost immediately, his eyes lighting up with friendly surprise, and he asked, "Hey, everything okay?" in a voice that sounded genuinely concerned. Embarrassed, Emma explained that her TV had frozen and she had no idea what she was doing, adding a small nervous laugh to hide how lonely she felt. Daniel didn't hesitate even for a second. He simply smiled and said, "Sure, I'll check it," as if helping her was the easiest thing he could do that evening. When he stepped inside her apartment, Emma became oddly aware of the warmth he brought with him, a calm presence that made her small living room feel less empty, and she wondered why she suddenly cared about how messy her coffee table looked. Daniel went straight to the TV, kneeling to check the cables, making light jokes about the device acting dramatic, and Emma found herself relaxing, smiling for the first time all day as she watched him work with quiet confidence. The silence between them didn't feel awkward. It felt gentle, like he wasn't rushing or judging her for needing help, and for the first time in weeks, Emma felt like she wasn't dealing with everything alone. While he scanned through the TV menu, Daniel casually asked how long she'd been having trouble with the device, and though he meant just the television, Emma surprised herself by opening up a little about the last few months being difficult. Daniel turned to her for a brief moment with a soft expression that didn't push for details but made it clear he was listening, and that single look felt more comforting than she expected. After fixing the settings, he checked everything twice, explaining it in simple words so she wouldn't feel clueless, and Emma appreciated how he never spoke down to her. She noticed small things about him, how he focused calmly, how he laughed quietly at his own jokes, how he seemed patient in a way that felt rare. When he finally stood up and the TV screen returned to normal, Emma laughed with relief, thanking him sincerely, and Daniel shrugged it off with warmth, saying he was just glad he could help. But as he prepared to leave, he noticed a half-packed box tucked near the couch, something she hadn't meant for anyone to see, and he asked gently if she was moving. Emma's breath caught because she hadn't expected him to notice, and she quickly explained that she wasn't leaving, she was simply trying to reorganize after the breakup. Daniel didn't comment too deeply, but the quiet understanding in his eyes made her feel seen without feeling exposed. It was a small moment, short and simple, yet something shifted inside Emma, something that felt like a tiny spark of connection she hadn't felt in a long time. Daniel walked back toward the door, telling her with a friendly grin that if the TV acted dramatic again, she could knock anytime, and Emma found herself smiling again, surprised by how easy it felt to talk to him. She thanked him once more, trying to hide how grateful she truly was. Not just for the TV, but for the unexpected kindness. And as he walked back across the hall, closing his door gently behind him, Emma stood in her now working TV glow, realizing that something about that small, ordinary moment felt strangely meaningful. She didn't know what it meant or what would happen next, but she felt lighter than she had in weeks, completely unaware that the simple act of asking for help would soon unravel into something deeper, something she never expected to find just across the hallway. Emma felt a quiet thrill as Daniel sat on her couch adjusting the TV, not rushing, letting her watch him work, and she noticed how careful he was, how gentle his movements seemed, almost comforting, as if his presence alone could fix more than just a frozen screen, and she realized she had never paid attention to him before, not really, even though they had seen each other countless times in the building, exchanged polite greetings and smiles, and shared small moments that now felt like missed opportunities. She couldn't explain why her heart felt heavier when he was near and lighter at the same time, but it was undeniable. And when Daniel finally asked softly if she had a rough day, she surprised herself by opening up about her breakup and how lonely the last few months had been, telling him about the quiet nights spent alone, the books she had read to distract herself, the half-watched movies, and even the small regrets she carried about things left unsaid in her last relationship. And Daniel listened without judgment, nodding occasionally, making small empathetic noises, his presence reassuring and steady, making her feel like she could share without fear of being vulnerable, a feeling she hadn't known in a long time. And when he finally sat back and offered a small smile, saying that everyone needed a friend sometimes, Emma felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness but from relief, because someone had noticed her struggle without turning away or offering empty advice. She watched him glance around her apartment, taking in the small details, noticing the scattered books and her half-packed boxes, and instead of commenting critically, he simply asked gently about them, letting her explain that she had been reorganizing her life slowly after the breakup, and she felt an unexpected warmth from his quiet respect for her space and her feelings, which made her want to share more, to let someone into her life in a way she hadn't allowed herself in months. Daniel adjusted the TV's cables, pressed buttons, and made light jokes about the stubborn device, and Emma laughed freely, the sound feeling strange yet comforting in her own home, filling a space that had been empty for too long. And for a moment she forgot about the pain she had carried, focusing only on the simple joy of being in someone's company, someone who seemed to care without needing anything in return. When the screen finally came back to life, and the colors and sound returned as if nothing had happened, Daniel stood and looked at her with that soft, understanding smile that made her chest tighten in a way that felt thrilling and safe at the same time. And as he prepared to leave, he paused, turning to her and asking, "Do you want some coffee? I can stay a little longer if you want." And Emma felt a blush rise to her cheeks because the offer felt casual but intimate, a small gesture that made her feel noticed, seen, and slightly nervous all at once. She quickly said yes, trying to hide the fluttering feeling in her stomach, and they moved to the small kitchen table, where Emma poured the coffee while Daniel watched, teasing her gently about how careful she was, and she laughed, feeling lighter, freer, and more connected than she had in months, sharing small stories about her work, her favorite books, and her attempts at cooking during quarantine, while Daniel talked about his own life, his love for photography, the challenges of moving to a new city, the quiet satisfaction of small projects, and the gentle lessons he had learned about taking life slowly and appreciating ordinary moments. And as they exchanged stories, their laughter and smiles filled the apartment with warmth, washing away the gray clouds of loneliness Emma had carried, making her realize how much she had missed human connection, genuine attention, and the comfort of someone who listened and cared without pressure. Daniel reached over briefly to adjust a stray coffee cup, and though the gesture was small, Emma felt a spark, a quiet recognition of the subtle intimacy growing between them, the kind that doesn't need words or promises, only presence and care. And she felt her heart open a little more, unsure if it was attraction or simply relief, but knowing it was something she wanted to explore. As the coffee cooled in their cups, the conversation shifted to lighter topics, funny stories from their childhood, awkward encounters, favorite movies and songs, and every word, every glance made Emma realize that she enjoyed being with Daniel in a way that made her forget the heartbreak that had seemed permanent just hours ago. And she noticed how his eyes met hers naturally, with warmth and curiosity, never lingering inappropriately, always gentle and reassuring, making her feel safe to simply be herself without pretension or fear. Time passed unnoticed, the soft glow of the lamp casting a warm light across their faces, and when Daniel finally stood to leave, he hesitated at the door, looking at her with a question in his eyes, and she felt a pang of longing, realizing that she didn't want him to leave, that she wanted more moments like this, more shared laughter and quiet understanding. And she found herself asking quietly, almost shyly, "Will you come by again? Even if it's not for the TV?" And Daniel smiled, a slow, genuine smile that made her chest flutter, nodding as he said, "I'd like that very much." And as he walked back across the hall, Emma felt a strange mix of anticipation and hope, a feeling that maybe this simple connection, born out of a broken TV and a rainy evening, could become something meaningful, something tender, something worth exploring. And she sat back down, staring at the now functioning TV, but noticing it less, thinking instead about the warmth, kindness, and subtle charm of her neighbor, and how a small act, asking for help, had created an opportunity for new beginnings, laughter, and perhaps even love, leaving her wondering what tomorrow might bring and feeling, for the first time in weeks, that life could surprise her in the gentlest, most beautiful ways. Emma and Daniel sat at her small kitchen table, the coffee steaming gently between them, and the earlier tension of a frozen TV had long disappeared, replaced by something warmer, more unexpected, as they shared stories about their lives. And Emma felt an unusual lightness, noticing for the first time how easy it was to talk to him, how effortlessly he made her laugh, how his voice carried a calm reassurance that seemed to melt away the loneliness she had carried since her breakup. And Daniel listened intently, occasionally nodding or smiling, never interrupting, making her feel like she mattered in a way she hadn't felt in months. And as they swapped small confessions, her awkward attempts at baking, his failed photography experiments, childhood memories, funny stories about neighbors, and secret little fears, they discovered shared experiences, moments that made them realize they weren't so different, and each small revelation drew them closer in a quiet, gentle way, the kind of closeness that grows naturally without effort or expectation, the kind that lingers in the heart long after the conversation ends. Emma noticed how Daniel's eyes seemed to light up when he laughed, how his expressions were open and sincere, how even the smallest gestures, reaching for the sugar, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear by accident, adjusting the chair so it didn't scrape the floor, carried a subtle attentiveness that made her heart beat faster without her fully understanding why, and she felt a rush of warmth every time their hands nearly touched, fleetingly on the table, leaving her longing for more contact but also appreciating the slow, tender pace, the gentle unfolding of a connection that didn't need to be rushed, that felt safe and real. Daniel shared stories about moving to Seattle, about the challenges of starting over, the quiet satisfaction of small victories, and how he had learned to notice and appreciate moments like these, where connection could form unexpectedly. And Emma realized she had been craving exactly this kind of attention, someone who could listen without judgment, someone who could make her laugh and feel understood at the same time. And she felt a flutter of hope in her chest, a soft excitement that something beautiful might be beginning right here, right now. As the conversation drifted to favorite books, movies, and music, they laughed together over shared tastes and playful differences, teasing each other gently, and Emma marveled at how natural it felt to be around him, how easily she could share thoughts she usually kept to herself, how safe and appreciated she felt. And Daniel noticed her smile, the way her eyes lit up when she laughed, and he felt a quiet thrill himself, a pull he hadn't expected from someone he barely knew hours before. Yet somehow the ease of their connection made everything feel familiar, comforting, and exciting at the same time. The coffee grew cold on the table, but neither of them noticed, lost in the rhythm of conversation, the soft background noise of the city through her apartment window, the occasional clap of rain on the roof, the kind of environment that encouraged honesty and vulnerability. And Emma found herself leaning forward unconsciously, drawn to Daniel's presence, while he mirrored the same subtle leaning, both of them creating a closeness that was more emotional than physical, a tension that was tender, sweet, and completely innocent, yet undeniably stirring. At one point, Daniel looked at her with an intensity that made her heart skip, not in a rush or demanding way, but with quiet admiration, and he said softly, "You know, you're stronger than you think?" And Emma felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness, but from the gentle acknowledgement of her struggles, the recognition that someone saw her resilience and appreciated it, and she realized she hadn't felt noticed or understood like this in a long time. She whispered a thank you, feeling the words carry more weight than usual, and Daniel smiled, brushing it off lightly, yet Emma could tell it meant more to him too, that he felt the same tender pull of connection, the same quiet excitement about discovering someone who resonated with him unexpectedly. As the afternoon faded and the sky darkened with evening clouds, Daniel reluctantly stood to leave, but paused at the door, glancing back with a look that conveyed he wasn't finished, that he wanted to stay a little longer. And Emma felt a pang of longing, wishing the moment wouldn't end, yet she knew the beauty of it was in its gentle unfolding, not in forcing it, and so she simply smiled and said softly, "I'm glad you stayed." And Daniel returned the smile, that slow, genuine expression that made her chest flutter, nodding as he said, "Me too, Emma, me too." And when he walked across the hall to his apartment, closing the door behind him, Emma felt a mix of excitement and anticipation, realizing that their simple coffee, laughter, and conversation had created something she hadn't expected, a connection that felt tender, real, and promising. Later, as she sat alone in her apartment, Emma replayed the moments. Over and over, the way he listened, the way he smiled, the small jokes, the soft compliments, the feeling of being truly seen, and she felt a warm hope growing in her heart, a sense that maybe life had nudged her toward this encounter, that the broken TV was less important than the person who had come to fix it, and she smiled at the thought that sometimes the simplest actions could lead to unexpected, life-changing moments. For Daniel, too, the day lingered in his mind, the sound of Emma's laughter, the warmth of her presence, the easy flow of conversation, and he felt an unexpected connection, a gentle pull that made him want to return, to spend more time, to see where this slow, tender bond could lead. And he sent a quiet message as he settled into his own apartment, a few words expressing gratitude and the hope of meeting again, leaving both of them with hearts lighter than they had been in months, and a sense that something beautiful, something gentle yet powerful, was beginning to grow between them, born out of a frozen TV, a simple cup of coffee, and the willingness to open up to someone new. A connection neither had expected but both were eager to explore, with each small moment building the foundation of a quiet, emotional, romantic story that promised laughter, tenderness, and the subtle excitement of a slow-blooming relationship, one that felt safe, meaningful, and fully ready to touch the hearts of anyone who might hear it. Emma sat on her couch, the soft glow of the lamp casting a warm light across her apartment, replaying the afternoon she had spent with Daniel, her heart still fluttering from the laughter, the quiet confessions, and the gentle connection that had formed between them. And just as she leaned back with a sigh of contentment, her phone buzzed, breaking the calm, and she saw a message from Daniel that made her chest tighten with a mix of excitement and curiosity. "I don't want to overstep, but today felt really good. If you ever need a friend, or just someone to talk to, I'm here." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, her mind racing as she tried to find the right words to respond without sounding too eager or awkward, yet feeling a strong urge to let him know she felt the same warmth and comfort in his presence. And after a brief pause, she typed back with a simple honesty that carried all the emotions she felt. "Today felt good for me too. Thank you for being kind when I needed it." Daniel's reply came a few minutes later, and she felt her heart skip when she read it. Maybe this was more than a TV glitch. Maybe it was the universe giving us a push. Emma smiled, realizing that the day's small events, the frozen TV, the shared coffee, the laughter, the quiet talks, had become something far more meaningful than she had expected. A connection that had grown gently, naturally, and without pressure, and she felt a flutter of hope, a sense that her life, which had felt stagnant and lonely, was slowly opening up to new possibilities. Over the next few days they began spending more time together, casually at first, walking through the nearby park, sharing stories over another cup of coffee, exchanging book recommendations, showing each other small photographs, and discovering the little things that made them laugh and feel understood. And with each interaction, Emma noticed how easy it was to be herself, how Daniel seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts and feelings, how his kindness never felt forced but authentic, and she felt a gentle excitement that grew quietly in her chest, a mix of comfort, admiration, and the soft stirrings of something deeper that neither of them rushed but both acknowledged. Each shared moment was small yet significant. A lingering glance, a smile that lasted a little too long, a laugh that echoed in the apartment long after the conversation had moved on, and Emma began to feel a sense of anticipation whenever she thought about seeing him again, the warmth of his presence lingering in her thoughts like sunlight filtering through clouds, making ordinary days feel extraordinary. And Daniel too felt the same pull, noticing the little ways Emma's eyes sparkled when she talked about things she loved, how her laughter was genuine and infectious, and how her kindness and openness made him want to be near her, to protect her happiness, to share more moments without rushing, without expectation, simply enjoying the process of discovering someone special in a city full of strangers. One evening, as they stood at her door after a long conversation, Emma felt the gentle tension of unspoken feelings, the quiet thrill of connection, and Daniel, sensing it, spoke softly, almost hesitant, yet clear in his words. "Whatever this becomes, I'm glad it started with you knocking on my door." Emma's chest tightened, her heart full of warmth and relief, and she whispered with a shy smile, "Me too, you won't believe how much." Knowing she didn't have to explain everything, that he understood the significance of the day, the hours they had spent laughing, sharing, and simply being present with each other, and that understanding, that quiet recognition, was more intimate and moving than any grand gesture could have been. In the following days, their bond continued to grow in subtle ways. Text messages exchanged with thoughtful humor, small favors offered without expectation, walks in the neighborhood where they shared thoughts and dreams, moments of comfortable silence that spoke louder than words, and Emma felt a renewed sense of hope and happiness, realizing that human connection could appear in the most unexpected ways, that healing from heartbreak could be gentle and patient, and that sometimes the universe nudges you toward the right people at the right time, without forcing or rushing anything. They discovered shared interests and new experiences together, from trying small local cafes to discussing favorite authors, to taking slow walks along the waterfront, each activity deepening the connection between them, and Emma began to notice a calm excitement whenever she thought about Daniel, a quiet longing to see him, talk to him, share thoughts and smiles, and feel the reassurance of a friendship that was slowly blossoming into something tender and emotional, a bond built on respect, laughter and mutual care. Daniel, in turn, cherished these interactions, noticing how Emma's presence made ordinary moments feel special, how her openness encouraged him to share his own stories, how her smile and thoughtful words brought a sense of peace he hadn't known he was missing, and the two of them began to naturally anticipate the small joys of each other's company, savoring each shared cup of coffee, each walk, each conversation, knowing that this slow, gentle connection was more meaningful than any rushed romance or fleeting excitement. As weeks passed, the moments between them became infused with emotional depth, gentle teasing, shared laughter, thoughtful gestures, supportive words, and quiet appreciation for each other's company. And Emma realized that she no longer felt lonely in the way she had before, that her heart had begun to heal from past pain, and that the warmth, care, and attention Daniel offered were a rare gift, a reminder that human connection could bring hope, joy, and love in ways she hadn't imagined possible. And Daniel felt similarly, recognizing that the bond they were building was special, a slow, emotional romance rooted in trust, kindness, and shared moments that didn't need grand gestures to feel meaningful. One rainy evening, after sharing another long conversation and laughter that stretched into the night, Daniel walked back across the hall, and Emma stood by her door, watching him go with a gentle smile, realizing that this slow-blooming friendship was becoming something tender, emotional, and romantic, that the universe's little nudge with a broken TV had brought her far more than she had asked for, and as she returned to her apartment, she felt a deep sense of hope, joy, and anticipation for the future, knowing that real connections sometimes start in the smallest, most unexpected ways, that gentle understanding can heal past heartbreak, and that Emma and Daniel's story was just beginning, a slow, heartfelt, romantic journey built on laughter, trust, emotional intimacy, and the quiet thrill of discovering someone who truly sees you, values you, and makes life feel brighter, lighter, and full of possibility. A story that would continue to unfold in moments of shared smiles, soft glances, and the tender promise of something more, leaving both of them, and anyone listening, to their story with a sense of warmth, hope, and the magic of connection that begins in the most ordinary ways yet changes everything.